Hello and welcome back to Mind of Success. I'm your host, Moni Millares, a Mexican British living in Asia. I work in fintech and build digital banks from scratch. In my years in the industry, I've realized most of us are in a vulnerable financial position. However, building a business can be a catalyst for change. So I created this podcast. It's about business stories we do not talk about. I chat with entrepreneurs, CEOs, and experts about their journeys, struggles, and lessons to extract gems of wisdom and practical tools so that we can thrive and create the impact we want. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today we have an extremely special guest because not only he has an amazing entrepreneurial life, but I have the honor that I've worked with him before. We were colleagues in a fintech. I call him a friend. He's amazing, and we will have a great treat today. So basically today we have Eliot Brooks. He is the founder and chief operating officer of Thriva. Thriva is a modern healthcare service with a focus on prevention, and Eliot is also recognized as Forbes 30 under 30. He's extremely humble, but Forbes 30 under 30 is a big deal. So Eliot, welcome to the show.
Hey Moni, and hey everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and great to see you again.
Okie dokie. So you and I met when we were building a fintech, basically. And we both were we were younger. And we were at the very early stages of building a tech company, which is very demanding. But to my surprise, and many of our colleagues' surprises, then one day you were like, "Oh, I'm leaving," and we're like, and I said, yes, because I am starting my own, basically, tech company. We're like, Oh, wow. And for all these months or even years, I don't remember, you were working in a high, fast-paced environment in the fintech, but at the same time, in parallel, you were building your company. So that's impressive. Can you tell us a little bit about how all that came together? Why did you go into that journey?
Yeah, it was very unintentional, really, I think is the first thing. So actually, before joining Tandem, so the fintech that we were obviously both at, I'd had the idea even then. And I had started talking about it with my then boss at the time. And the opportunity at Tandem came up, and I kind of said, I'm just going to, I need to focus on my career. I'd not long before having the idea for Thriva, been working on another startup idea in the background. I was like, I just want to focus on getting in a company, progressing, getting my heads down. What we were doing at Tandem, the fintech, was super exciting at the time, kind of second ever digital only bank in the UK to get a banking license.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think on joining for 6 months, those first 6 months, I kind of didn't really speak or think too much about Thriva, the idea at all. And then I think probably halfway through, went for a catch up with my old boss, and over a couple of drinks, we just started talking about the idea again. And I don't know, it just kind of, it's just such the right time. And I think kind of actually weirdly working in fintech and seeing all of the kind of explosion happening there almost made me more sure that that's what healthcare needed, right?
Yeah.
Kind of all the parallels around the explosion of digital technology, mobile apps, digital adoption, the desire from people and consumers to kind of be more in control, whether that's of their finances or their health. It just felt like there were lots of parallels, lots of differences as well. But I guess that kind of sense of timing and excitement, it somehow gave me the energy to moonlight on Thriva whilst working in a very intense but fun environment at Tandem. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you just use like the word, it gives you like basically the energy.
Mm,
If you go back to that time, like what was going on in your mind? Because it is hard to just work in a startup. That's it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of
mm,
pressure. There's not enough
mm.
resources. And then at the end of the day, you even had more energy to go and work on your own startup. While many people have a job and they want to do a side gig and start growing something on the side, and their biggest challenge is, I'm tired after work. Like, how do you tap into that energy? What was going on through your mind back then so that
Yeah.
you still had the energy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, I think like most people, when you join a startup as well, you're very energized by that, right? It's such an exciting time. Like looking back then, I think came in 12 person. By the time I left, it was 100 people in a year, and it was so exciting what we were doing. So I was very much energized in my day job, but then energized by what I was working on the side. And I think a combination of maybe two things: one, just having a passion for what I was doing, and two, actually kind of having two, initially one and then two co-founders. You've got almost like your accountability there, but you've also got a team to help move things forward faster. And kind of been very blessed actually in that there's a really nice balance of skill sets, but a very good, strong shared understanding around like working and expertise between the three of us. So I think that helped move things a lot in the background as well. And I think it'd be remiss of me not to reflect on the fact that one of us was not myself nor Hamish. Tom is a very talented engineer and product mind by background. So, he was able to really press ahead in terms of building out the actual digital side of things, which is often a bit of a blocker for
The
people when they
challenge.
have an idea.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. So the secret was like, hey, you had the passion and you had the team. It was not just
Build a
you. So
team.
it's like
Yeah.
basically you push each other all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you have to build around your gaps in knowledge and skills, and we were very fortunate to kind of all come together at the right time and enjoy working with each other, enjoy each other's energy and passion, and complement each other very well in terms of skill sets.
I kind of know the answer, but I'll ask anyways. How did you guys know each other?
Well, I'm hoping you know the answer to half of these questions,
Yes, I know.
given your friends.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
so
like kind of know the answer, but so that
yeah,
everybody knows.
yeah, no, it's fortuitous, really. So Hamish was my boss whilst I was at the company before Tandem. He had gone through this entrepreneurial program that I'd gone through called the New Entrepreneurs Foundation. He was he's probably about 7 years older than me, but he'd gone through that program maybe 2 years before me, and had become my manager. So, I knew I worked well with him and I knew what he was good at and
Yeah,
he knew
yeah,
what I was good at, which was great. And then Tom was a friend, really, and I had seen what he had done at another startup. He was a CTO at a mobile payment startup, and I used the product all the time. I loved it. I thought it was such a great product. It was probably just a tiny bit too early. It was all around. It was kind of like Venmo, but pre really, maybe not pre Venmo, but pre all the digital banks in the UK when paying people was so
well,
clunky, like
yes.
really, really clunky. Um, so I knew he was a very strong engineer, and I knew he was a good guy who I got along well with. And Hamish and Tom had actually met before as well, just coincidentally through kind of a pitch event or something. So yeah, I was able to pull them together and go from there.
Awesome. Did you guys have an agreement? Did you talk things before in terms of, hey, we're friends, but we'll go into work mode and we'll have disagreements and we'll fight and we'll, like there will be, I don't know, friction. That's the word that I'm looking for. There
Yeah.
will be friction. What do we put first, friendship or work? Did you ever have that conversation or it just evolved?
Um, I don't think we ever did, actually, if I'm completely honest with you. I think there was like I said, like a shared mutual understanding, mutual respect. And I think that I think, we would have heated debates, but that kind of reinforced the fact that it was a good team. And especially in that first year or so, where it was pretty much just us working on the business, we could really get into a problem and coming at it from different viewpoints. And it was quite a funny thing to have to learn when people joined, maybe we shouldn't have as heated a debate. Wasn't that bad, but it was there was a lot of passion there. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
In terms of kind of like agreements, or I don't think we ever vocalized it. We probably had some kind of founders agreement in place early on. We came to a very easy, simple agreement on things like equity and salary, and that was that it's all even Stevens. And just went from there. I think that's quite important, isn't it, as well? That like we agreed that compensation equity was even, because that then reinforces that mutual respect. Yeah,
because it's even. That is
exactly
fair. It's not
you
work more, you work, like it's like the three of us in this together.
Yeah, and there was a funny kind of interesting conversation at the start when Hamish and I had done a bit of work on the idea on the side, really probably over 6 months or so, but it hadn't really moved that far forward. But in our heads, we thought we had moved it a bit far forward, and so there was a kind of question as to whether it would be an even split when we agreed to work with Tom. But then actually, that short period before, now in the context of over 6 years on, where we were working part-time moonlighting, it's nothing. So it's very short-sighted, I think, to get kind of hung up on those initial splits when you're so early on in the journey.
Beginning. Yes.
Yeah.
You also mentioned about salary. Mm-hmm. When you first started, I mean, you had a full-time job that paid you salary. But then, what type of conversation did you have back then? Like, who put the capital at the beginning? Did you go fundraising since the very beginning? Was it like your savings? How did you guys go about that? Because if you were paying salaries, I mean, there was capital behind to pay.
Yeah. Good question. So, we were again we found one investor, just coincidentally, who we pitched when we were in full-time employment, all three of us. And he said, if you quit your jobs, I will back you, but only on the condition that you're able to raise a total of 150. And I think he was offering to put in £50,000. And 150 is the amount up to which you can invest under a UK legislation called SEIS, which is tax efficient thing, basically, for angel investing. Anyway, so we were like, okay, cool. Well, we couldn't really, Hamish and I weren't in a financial position to quit our jobs. I managed to agree to go part-time with Tandem, which was great. So I was still earning salary, but with some time, I think 1 day a week to work on the idea. Tom, thankfully, took a month off. He was contracting and he built that product in that month. And during that time, we got something like 50 sales. This was probably Jan 2016. And by the end of Jan, we had a commitment from Seed Camp, who are a very early stage venture capital investor, to invest. Again, on the purview that we quit our jobs, obviously. And then we were able to find the rest of the money through angel investors as well. So all of that happened very, very quickly. You're talking like in the matter of a week from getting seed. So we built the product, shipped it, 50 sales. We were in the process of pitching Seed Camp. When they said yes, I think that was a Friday evening. And I think by the Tuesday, we had filled the rest of the round and we resigned on the Wednesday morning. Yeah.
Amazing.
Congrats. So it was a whirlwind weekend. And it was remarkable because lots of people who had said no to us before, once Seed Camp that the kind of validation of the fund
Yeah.
Meant that we were able to reconvince them.
Of course. Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah,
Cool.
so we raised some finances and then left our jobs, repaid Tom a salary for the month that he worked, and yeah.
What was your biggest fear at the time?
Ooh, good question. I think we always kind of thought, oh, this might not work. I think it would be, which is funny looking back at it because it wouldn't have been a waste, but it would be feeling like I'd wasted time or energy, part of my career, and not achieved anything from it. But I think obviously now retrospectively, I would look back and say, well, I would have learned a ton from it going wrong that would have helped me. But at the time, I was leaving Tandem, which felt incredibly exciting, energetic place to be. So that felt like a risk and a fear. Like, what if this amalgamates to nothing? Have I made the wrong decision long term for my career? I'd say that was probably the biggest one.
Okay. Yeah. And how did you convince yourself, or how did you push through the fear? Or is it more like that's it, I don't even have time to think of the fear?
I think it was a very good point. I think it's probably
very fast. It's like within a week, it's like, okay, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Well, because it was so fast and it was like that weekend, it was like, it's happening. I was just like, cool, I've got to resign now. And so you don't think too much about it. And that last month at work was so busy. And then Hamish had managed to negotiate his notice period down, and Tom was already off working on it. So those two, like 1 week after us resigning, were both working together. And I was going there after work to our kind of new office space, but not able to be there. So I was also getting the FOMO, which helped me kind of push through the fear. The fear of leaving Tandem behind was also the fear of not being there as we were starting on this awesome journey,
Sounds very exciting. Especially because it was like,
it was fast.
Okay, I'm in, done.
Yeah.
Because many times we second guess because there's time to think, and then the mind gets in the way.
Yeah, that's it. That's maybe a good point, isn't it? It's the whole just like jump off and see what happens type mentality, rather than get caught up in thoughts forever. And I think that's it. Like looking back as well, like that fear of, was this the right move, is completely irrational. Like it's such a learning experience you go through, from all the silly all the kind of scary, challenging starting moments of getting customers through the door and figuring out how to serve them and make them love you, and hiring your first team member. All that stuff is really, really good, strong, great experience. So, yeah.
I just realized we've been talking a lot about how the company started, but we have not gone into what do you do in the company and your journey on how you came up with the idea. That it's a very personal journey that also solves a very relevant need.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guide us through how did you come up with the idea and how that overlaps with your life?
Yeah, of course. So, I think like a lot of startups, it's kind of solving problems you understand, I guess, is the mantra. And when I was probably like 15, 16, diagnosed with a relatively unsevere, inconsequential genetic condition that meant I had to be put on medication and take a tablet every night, and I do a blood test once every 4 months, and had been doing this from the age of 16. I think it was just one time, like I was going off to do a routine blood test and got chatting to Hamish about this process and how clunky it was. It's go to your GP to get a form, to then go to sit in a waiting room, taking your ticket off the wall, waiting for your number to be called, kind of like this weird game of bingo or something. And I felt, I was always a bit embarrassed almost being in there because I was pretty young at the time, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, relatively healthy looking, I guess, and waiting to get a blood test where you then pop in, get your blood drawn, quite painful, unpleasant experience. And then, the results just obviously hopefully come back to your GP, but you typically don't really hear anything. I think they only really tend to follow up if something's wrong. So because you have no feedback mechanism there, right? You can't see the results. You don't know that they've received them, which just is really actually quite archaic in the world that we live in, where, you have Amazon or that kind of, exactly, real-time notification style stuff, to the point on fintech, how mobile banking had changed everything. This felt really, really backwards. So we just started talking about that. And yeah, I think that was just the origin of the story. That when we looked at it in the context as well of, we often hear about people living longer, but then the rise of diseases, things like type 2 diabetes, things like heart disease, meaning more and more people are actually dying of these things, that we're actually spending less of our lives in good health. And it just felt like, so, at a time when we've never been better able to understand what's going on inside our body, we're going backwards. How is that happening? So it felt like a lot of mega trends kind of coming together, and we just got very excited about it, to that point on excitement. And, any way we were looking at this, the NHS being overburdened, the like switch and change and focus on diets, the type of podcast you saw coming out with Tim Ferriss on quantified self, and the rise of mobile app technology, things happening in other sectors where you had incumbents who were slow to move and digital disruptors. All of these things just got us really excited about, wow, this is the time for a service focused on putting people in charge of their health and helping them manage it better.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm a big health advocate. So yes, I love, what I loved? I was still in the UK when you launched. So I was your customer. So So I love the idea that basically what the service is, like, you pay online and then you receive like this little pack at home, and then you can take a sample, like a blood sample, and you just go like tick. In theory, it doesn't hurt. In practice, in your brain, you go like, it hurts, but no, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It just hurts a little bit. Yeah, but it's like, it's fine. And then you basically do a little bit of blood dropping and then you send it in the post and you get your results. But the results, you get them online. And I think that was game changer, because then you could see not only the results, but I remember that it's like you could see kind of, it wasn't doctor's advice, but it was more of a, this is where you fit compared to other people your age, for example. It's like, you're good. And then if you do it like a quarter later or 6 months later, you could compare, because you have the tests,
your trend lines
place. Yes. Right now I have a bunch of papers everywhere that I don't know. I just don't know.
Sorry, I realized I didn't actually explain it. I just said how I came up with the idea, but not what the idea is. But that's it, exactly. So the idea is you can by kind of getting this data on yourself, you can pick up when things start trending the wrong way, or things are already a problem. And lots of the kind of things we test are very much focused on, kind of risk of heart disease, risk of diabetes, risk of like an iron deficiency, etc. Lots of things that you ultimately empowered to kind of course correct and self improve. Exactly, that's it. And you can kind of understand where you're at with your health versus others, and what it can take to improve. So we're doing a lot at the moment, specifically on kind of how we then support you to action those results, which I think is obviously, that's the challenge in health, right? And it's why we see that, as I say, in kind of developed economies, you now have shortening health span, i.e. time in good health is getting shorter or stalling. It's because it's really hard to do all those things that we all know are quite right for us. But
Okay, I'm going to change gears a little bit, and I'll come back to the business as such. How do you hire your team? What is it that you look for. There's
Mm.
like, I've noticed like my style of hiring versus other people's style.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, I guess, intuition based versus
Yeah.
other people have a checklist and very specific technical question. And for me, that's okay, but that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
How do you hire your team? How did you decide? Yeah, that's a good person, even though she or he has or doesn't have the experience. Like, what's your
Yeah.
thinking process?
Yeah. Very, very good question. I would say it's probably changed over time. So I think that, and it's probably changed out of necessity in some ways. So particularly early on, I think that intuition piece was quite important to me, right? You know, you're working very closely in a small team. This is still feels like your baby, and it's very precious. And you know, someone comes into that team because the team's so small, the percentage impact they can have can be really high. So feeling quite strongly on a, I guess, on a like interrelationship level, emotional level, etc., that they're going to be the right person as well as have the right skills. Felt very, very important at the start. And, you know, we hired an awesome team at the start. We couldn't have done it without them, and still very good friends with lots of them today. You know, kind of felt like I don't like the cliche of family, but it did feel like a family at that point. And now I talk of it like a sports team, right? And that's the kind of, yeah. And I think the things that have changed is, so recognizing that what you're assessing is someone's ability to do their job really well, not necessarily like how you get on with them, because I think that can lead to quite a lot of bias. And you know, we're trying to build a team that really understands healthcare, and healthcare affects everyone. You know, yeah, I didn't need to kind of bang the drum too hard for building diverse teams. I think that's very well understood now. But I think you need to try and remove your bias in hiring as much as possible. Look for, what am I trying to understand about their ability to do this job? And do they share common values with me and the team that I think means that they're right for this role? So we don't talk about a culture fit interview. We have a values based interview. So as part of the final round, you will meet two members from other teams. Will typically be very different teams to the team you're kind of being recruited into. And we've gone through quite rigorous training as a company in terms of the questions we ask, what we look for, and why that's important, and how value interviewers should understand those in as objective a way as possible. So
Yes,
yeah, so I think it's changed a lot, but I was very similar to you for sure, and I probably still am somewhat. But I think, you know, you do also get a feel when you meet someone. There's still days when I come out of those interviews and I'm like, wow, yeah, we want
yeah,
that person. They're
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So like that is obviously still
A big part of it.
a big part of it. Yeah.
How do you keep them? Because like, people go into startups with an idea and then reality hits. And it's like, shoot,
Yeah.
you have to work a lot. And it's not
Yeah.
like straightforward. And if they come from corporate, then it's like, oh, in corporate, there used to be a team that did that.
Yeah.
You're a very small team. How do you motivate everyone, keep the high spirits up, and everyone committed to the
Ooh.
company?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think that was something I almost left out of the hiring process, actually. But one of the things we always look for as well are the motivations for joining. And often what we see, and kind of comes out in that values interview as well, is people are they're bought into the mission and the vision of the company, right? And it was very similar at Tandem. So people were very passionate about the problems they were solving, and the impact they're able to have. So I think that's kind of a big part of what motivates people. And we really try to drill that in as part of onboarding process, helping people understand exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we understand whether we're advancing towards that vision and mission. So I think that's a big piece. I think the other piece is kind of like autonomy and setting them up for success and helping, make them clear what they're owning, what they're responsible for, and giving them the tools to do their jobs. Obviously, startups can be chaotic, but if you've got the support, whether it's from your manager or your tools that you have access to, or resources, or consultants, mentors, whatever, that really, really helps. I think the other thing I'd say is we put a lot of work into developing the managers at the company. So I think we're about 140 now,
140 and we have now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's scary big. Yeah, but so we probably when we were about 30 people, we hired a head of people. So we put a real emphasis on people in the business from the start. Now that team is probably, gosh, I hope they don't listen to this and hear me get it wrong, but I think it's about 9. And we hired actually probably when we were about 70 people, a person focused on L&D. And one of the things, which I think, I don't have any data to back this up, but my suspicion is that most startups don't hire someone in L&D that early on. But it's because we've been very deliberate and strategic about putting a focus on people. And so we've got in place like manager development training. It's all about, helping managers be the best they can, because that's such a big part of the puzzle. I don't know, if you think back to great experiences you've had in your career, quite often the commonality will be that the person managing you was awesome. Yes. Yeah. We had the fortune of having some awesome managers. Yeah. So that's another big part, I think, to kind of motivating, getting the best out of the team, etc.
It's properly investing in people, even though it sounds like cliche, but it's like, yes.
Yeah, it's very cliche, isn't it? But I think there's some real.
Yeah. Well, I'm the first one. I love like development. But once I say it out loud, it does sound like cliche, like investing in people. But actually, that's the basis of everything.
Yeah. And I think lots of people say it, and it's lip service. But I think I like to think that we do a pretty good job of actually acting on it and following through.
That's what I was about to say. That it's like this is just the reflection of good leadership at the very top. It just doesn't happen just because.
Yeah, I would hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think so. So talking about leadership, leadership is not just leading a team, but it's also like leading yourself, like personal leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but also I assume that there has been difficult times, especially because it's been like 6-7 years since you started the business. Did you ever go into coaching or mentoring for yourself, not for the team, and that helped you kind of work through stress or challenges? Did you ever go through a similar experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I've had coaching on and off throughout, really. And I'm thankful to be a part of a few really awesome kind of networking groups that have really helped on the mentoring side. So being a part of, I don't know if you've come across that they have different names, but like tribes, support groups, etc., where it's kind of the same group of people, typically 6, 7, 8. So I have one for COOs, and we meet once a month, or maybe it's once every 6 weeks or so. And so you get to know this group pretty intimately because you're sharing challenges, whether it's work or personal. And then the group, it's almost like group therapy.
It's like I call them masterminds. Yeah. Yes, it's like
mastermind.
A mastermind.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll hear from the group and get their perspective on the problem and not necessarily always giving you solutions. The idea is to kind of that more coaching mentality. We're asking you questions and drawing on potentially analogous examples so that you can identify what you think is right. So been a part of one of those for a while, had a coach who it's more ad hoc. that I'll go to them. I know a lot of people kind of enjoy that regularity. I think for me, I much prefer going with a specific problem, feeling like and I think I'm quite lucky as well in that, having two co-founders is actually very, very helpful. If one of them winds you up the wrong way, you can, we get on very, very well, thankfully. But, having two others rather than one other can be quite helpful in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. What has there been anyone in your professional career or as an entrepreneur that you're like that mentor, not like specific coach, just like someone that like, hey, that working with that person or the advice or perspective of a mentor has been like it changed properly. If you look back, you're like, yeah, working with that mentor changed my not changed my life, but had a large impact in who I am as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, good question. I think I've had a lot of really great bosses. And actually, do you know what? That's one of the weird things that when you go to them being a founder, you don't really quite have a boss in the same way. And it's something you actually slightly miss. And that's why I guess the mentoring coaching piece becomes quite important. I've had some fantastic bosses from, first boss in the rollout company, my boss at TravelX, Ruth was amazing. Still kind of kept in touch with her as I moved into Thriva world, and she was very helpful at times. And then mentor wise, I can't pick one particular person. There's been so many people that I've gone to at different points in time for different problems, if you know what I mean. And that's where those kind of support groups have been so helpful, is that there's always someone who's got pretty good relevant experience who can help you out. But because it's so broad, I would struggle to say this one person really, really helped me.
Yes. Actually, what's coming to my mind now, it's like you're using the word help frequently now. And it's like, how easy or difficult has it been for you to ask for help?
Yeah, good question. I think it depends a lot on, what the challenge is really, and how much you feel like you should have the answer. I think what's been remarkable is sometimes I've caught up with people who often maybe kind of fellow founders or whatever, and I've not necessarily gone to catch up with them thinking I need help, but then I've got there and they've kind of just almost coaxed out of me this thing that I didn't even have a clue I needed to talk to someone about, but then I did. I've left it feeling infinitely better. Moni, my door is going.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No worries.
They might well knock at the flat. Yeah. Talk about things you didn't expect to happen during a podcast.
That's fine.
This is the joys of working at home, right?
Exactly. Because it's like you have the flexibility to
be
at home and then multitask.
Yeah. And you get to see everyone's kitchen as well.
Exactly. Kitchen or living rooms. Exactly. Or people walking around.
So I wouldn't say I've struggled to ask for help, but there's maybe some times where you're kind of slightly reluctant to admit it to yourself that you need it, and other people see that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it sounds like you've had an amazing experience as a co-founder, as an entrepreneur, as a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's been like challenging, but like positive. Has it been like, well, I know now I see the smile and I'm like, he's being very polite. What has been the challenge? Yeah, what's been the dark side of building the company and the challenge?
Yeah, good question. I think
Because
in
you make it sound so easy. I'm like, yes, I want to
no,
do that, but it's
I mean, there's
not.
been some very, very tough times for sure. I think the commonality around when I've found it toughest is typically around the periods where we've been fundraising, and that's been a bit challenging. Fundraising is always challenging. I think for 90% of companies out there, they're probably going to get more no's than yeses, unless you're like an absolute rocket ship out of the valley or whatever.
Yeah.
But it does feel like we had quite a tough time of it, particularly kind of our first couple of rounds. Just because what we were doing was quite new. We're in the UK where we have the NHS and it's amazing, but so will people pay for a healthcare product? Blah blah blah. We also started out at the time when the Theranos scandal broke, and here we are with a finger prick blood test, just as Elizabeth Holmes was being indicted, and so understandably, investors were pretty cautious and nervous, and we got a lot of no's. And it's that time where you feel like you've worked really hard. You feel like your numbers are, they could always be better, but they're solid enough versus what you hear the industry wants to see. And then you go out there and you kind of, it's like taking your clothes off and everyone rejects you. It's not very nice. So I think those kind of fundraising periods were quite challenging for sure, and led to kind of feeling pretty burnt out. But we always found our way through them, luckily. But there were some pretty dark days. I think we had 1 week when we were raising our Series A. We had 1 week where, and this is the other thing, it switches so fast. You go from like having all this interest, thinking, oh yeah, great, this is going to be so much easier than last time. We've got like 10 funds at this stage, 10 funds at this stage. And then in 1 week, I think we got like lots of the warm funds just drop out and pull out. And, the fear of like, oh, are we going to have to wind down the company? You're employing people at that stage. You got kind of, I think that period of time was about 18 people we're responsible for. We had a few months left of runway, really, maybe a bit more. So those are the challenging times. But I think kind of having recently seen a couple of friends go through those scenarios, and actually one of them winding the company down in the end, I think there's kind of a slight reframing you can do there. Again, to that point of like fear of, when we talked about what was my fear.
Yeah.
If things go drastically wrong, so long as you carry yourself in the right way, you do right by your team, you do the everything you can to help them find new roles, you give them appropriate notice, you make sure you're able to kind of pay them their notice, etc. You've gone through an experience that lots of people won't have done. You hopefully would have learned a ton, and you've got the failure badge. That means that the next time round,
the lessons.
Yeah. So I think having heard him reflect on it, I almost feel a lot more, assured if we have to go into fundraising mode again. That I can, maybe draw on his strength and mindset there. But I think we're hopefully,
Now you use the word mindset. It's one of my
Yes.
favorite things. What's your mindset?
Good
What has
question.
been your mindset for success? You've built a very successful company, so you've got a very successful mindset.
Well, I struggle with this because I think it changes quite a lot, but I guess maybe that's part of it, right?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's like it changes. Yeah. That's number one. Like it changes.
Yeah. The uncertainty, coping with and adapting thing, it's kind of like the if something goes wrong, you just deal with it, figure it out, get better, etc. I think the the kind of like you, I'm a big lover of self-development. So whether I'm reading stuff, I'm trying new challenges or taking on new things, kind of 3 years ago was terrified of public speaking and found myself having to do more and more of it as we built the team. So I did a stand-up comedy course, kind of push. Yeah, that was so good. Would recommend that to anyone who does not like public speaking. I think you kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone, don't you? And you learn best there. And you probably shouldn't always be in that zone because that's not healthy either. And that's kind of where burnout comes along. But figuring out that time when to kind of step out and step back in and embrace change.
Embrace
and
change.
Have fun, I think, is the other thing.
That is so important. Yes.
Yeah. So I very much like to bring the fun at work and have a laugh as well.
I have a curiosity question that it's not relevant for the listeners, probably. Have you ever snapped at work and be like the angry boss that no one likes? I cannot see you, but have you?
Probably a couple.
You started coughing, so maybe yes.
Which I think it's quite interesting because I'm probably a little bit competitive if I'm honest with myself. I've done one of these personality things and it tells me that that's a strength, but I am quite competitive and and that's coupled with also liking to laugh and joke, which can leave this slight dichotomy in character. But I think one example comes to mind, which I think all my colleagues would kind of laugh about now that we're there. But I was pretty frustrated one morning because the night before, a team member had organized a pub crawl around where we were moving to the new office. And that's something we'd done before at the previous office. And, it was a great social event. I didn't go to this one on this occasion, but I got into work the next day and this was pre-pandemic, right? So most people typically we said work from home, max 1 day a week, everyone come to the office. So most people would always be in the office. But after this one event, there were like 8 out of 20 people there, which nowadays our office typically has, 20 out of 140 or whatever. So, but back then it was like, I was pretty angry. So on Monday, I think the following Monday out of like morning talk, I put up a photo of a graveyard.
Oh my God. That's dark.
I put up a photo of a graveyard and I said, this is what the office looked like after those drinks. I'm all up for having fun, but this company will go to a graveyard if we don't get stuff done. Something like that, which, as I say, when you try and compare that with normally happy, enthusiastic, positive, laughy Eliot, exactly. I think people got a bit surprised. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What? Yes. Yeah. But overall, I'm assuming you are like a good leader. Like.
Oh, I hope so. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe we could put a poll at the bottom of the podcast or something. Check, but I would hope so.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
So as we are reaching towards the end of the episode, there's a lot of people that are employees right now and they have the side gig. What would be your final remarks towards them then to move from side gig to a full-time kind of business, successful business?
Yeah, good question. I guess part of me thinks, is it right that it moves from sidekick to full-time project? Not some things can just remain a side hustle and be great and deliver you the enjoyment or the income even that you want. But there are lots of perks to also, being in a job that you love as well. So I think that's a kind of interesting question for people to reflect on sometimes.
Yeah.
But then if they're pretty set on it, I think, how can you, one of the things we did was like, what is the biggest concern right now at this point, right? So when we were starting Thriva, we like managed to figure out a lab and figure out this fingerprint kit stuff. And we were like, are people going to pay for it? And it's like, well, what can you do to advance as much in like disproving? So the hypothesis was people won't pay privately for a blood test. How far can we get in terms of disproving that hypothesis and get as far as you can? And then once you're blocked, write down the next one, then get as far as you can, and then you're blocked. And then eventually you're going to be blocked because you haven't got the website or the product or the or the funds or the cash, or you need more time or you need more people. And, you know, at some point there might be a moment where you say, oh, I need to fundraise, or I need to build a team, or I just need to take the plunge. I've, you know, maybe managed to build up some finances in the back that give me 3 months to spend. You know, if time's that blocker, then that's how you solve it, right? So write down those challenges, try and disprove the hypothesis, and once you get blocked, you know, assess how you unblock it.
That sounds like beautiful advice from experience, not from a textbook. It's like the real
I think it's probably from a textbook as well, to be honest. But
mix.
You know, that is one thing that you do. How you apply it is the challenge, but there's some great stuff in textbooks, right? Like the Lean Startup is a book that's often thrown around. Yeah. Another one that I found incredibly helpful at the start was the mum test, which is all around how you ask great questions to prospective customers. Yeah. Have you come across it?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Basically, the core of that book, it's like, well, of course, it's the mom test, because like your mom will always say yes. So it's like, don't ask your mom.
Yeah. Ironically, my mum thought Thriva was a terrible idea. So,
well,
yeah.
Would you prefer right now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Eliot, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been really great to see you and catch up and chat through everything with you.
Yeah, likewise. And all the best and all the success in the coming years for Thriva. And
thank you.
Thank you. And then everyone, remember to re-listen to the episode, take one thing that you liked and that you think it's going to make the most difference to your life, and then take action on that. It doesn't make sense if you're like, oh, all these many ideas, and then you don't take action. So just pick one and then go and take action. And I'll see you next week. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.